What if the real problem with remote work isn't remote work at all, but the fact that most teams never learned the new social norms required to make it work? In today's episode, Katherine Robinette and I dig into what leaders are still missing 6 years after the pandemic reshaped work, how to build trust virtually, how to handle conflict before it spirals, why one-on-ones are really about attunement, not accountability, and why the best leaders are paying attention to mindset, method, metrics, and mood. Welcome back to the Mike Method, where leadership isn't learned once, it's learned one conversation, one idea, and one practical lesson at a time. Every episode is designed to help you become a better leader than you were yesterday. I'm your host, Mike Desjardins. Today, I'm joined by Katherine Robinette, founder and president of Keystone and Raven. Katherine is a theater-trained speaker, consultant, and facilitator of more than 30 years of experience helping leaders make work less work. She helps organizations see what's really going on beneath the surface, stop fixing the wrong problems, and uncover the hidden friction that keeps good strategies from turning into real momentum. In this conversation, we explore why hybrid and remote work can absolutely work, but only when leaders become more intentional about connection, communication, and culture. Katherine shares why work is sometimes something we create together, not something we simply execute alone. Why curiosity is one of the most underrated leadership skills, and how leaders can create the kind of participation that people actually want to be part of. If you're enjoying the podcast so far, the best way to help us continue to grow our audience is to hit that subscribe button. Now let's dive in. Katherine, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So I was flying back from Croatia with my family on Friday, and there's a guy sitting next to me. And I don't know, we struck up a conversation. What do you do? What do you do? And he works for a global software company that's based in Munich, but he actually lives in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. And he was partway home on the flight we were on together. And he's like, hey, I'd love to get your take on something, because I work remotely, and then 4 times a year I go to this company in Munich to go do like offsites at head office. He's like, what's your take on the whole work remote versus, hey, everybody should be in the office, or everybody should be in the office a certain number of times a week? And my response to him was, well, one, I can't believe we're still talking about this 6 years after the pandemic started. I figure we would have sorted this all out right now. I mean, my quick answer is hoteling probably works best. Remote works fine, and know your culture isn't going to get destroyed. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Oh gosh, so many. I mean, Adam Grant's organization just did some research and came out with the forced go back to work mandates are actually indicative of, ego and command and control mindset, which I think I sort of always suspected. It was nice to have some validation there. But yeah, I'm with you. I think remote work works fine if the expectations are clear, and if people have some common understanding about what work is beyond just getting the tasks done. And I think that's the piece. The folks who are interested in office culture or company culture, and the people who are trying to create a better work experience, I think that's where they're worried about remote and hybrid work, in that we haven't quite figured out how to socialize well virtually.
It's interesting because I think, at the beginning of the pandemic, Zoom all of a sudden just like came out of nowhere, right? We'd been using it for years because we went fully remote as a company in 2009. So by the time the pandemic hit, we were like, yeah, we got this sort of thing.
Yeah, whatever, right?
Yeah, fine, we got this. Because our teams spread out everywhere and our clients are all over North America and their offices are all over North America, we were just used to the fact that trying to have a meeting with all the people we met with, when there was a person in Calgary, a person in Houston, somebody in LA, another person in Toronto, another person in Montreal, it doesn't make any sense to bring everybody together for an hour. So we just were always on Zoom. So then the world woke up to Zoom, and then, then Slack took off at the same time, and then Microsoft Teams was playing catch up, and then Teams took off. But I think the challenge became that how do you connect in a human way? Like, how do you build that human connection when everything was email, and everything is, or not everything, but a lot of communication was email or Slack messages. And a lot of people struggled with Zoom because they were like, well, I get on Zoom and then I have my meeting and then I shut off Zoom, which is not how the world worked. Like, you didn't go to the office and rock into a meeting, do the meeting, and then walk out and then never speak to that person or check in on their day or anything else. So I think there was my take is I think there was some missing social norms that we just sort of all have agreed to face, right? Like you say good morning to people when you walk in the office. And if you're sitting down to a meeting, people are rolling in. You just have casual conversations where with weirdly, virtually, most people would come on and it's dead air. They're staring at each other, waiting for the last person. And then it's straight into the meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's the mundane small talk of how was your weekend or what's the weather like where you are or whatever. And it's like, okay, but you're missing a real opportunity here to follow up and connect and have some semblance of a normal conversation with these people. If you do that, take advantage of there being one person on early, and actually have some real connection with them. I think we're missing a bet too when we say, yes, we have flex time or work from home, or in that we don't explicitly say, look, part of this covenant is you must proactively reach out to your colleagues. And I don't care if it's social or, you just want to send them a dumb GIF or like what it is. But, and for a while, maybe we need to have metrics along those lines where we're just counting how many times are you interacting with other people until we start developing those habits and those social norms of, oh yeah, this is fine. And it's normal to have fun with the technology, right, or through the technology.
We've had to teach, and it's because of what we do, we've actually had to teach our clients how to do this in meetings with us. And the way we do it is we literally just, instead of saying, asking somebody how their weekend was, we'd say, what'd you get up to this weekend? And then like, oh, okay, well, I was doing this or this. And then we'll also disclose and like, oh, I was like, just got back from a trip. So pretty quiet. I played pickleball a couple times Saturday and Sunday morning while my wife and daughter slept. And then, I did a bunch of stuff with my daughter on Saturday and my wife and I walked the dog. It was actually pretty good, like chill weekend coming back from 2 weeks being away on vacation. And then what happens by modeling that is that we started to see our clients would never just say, my weekend was great. And if they did, we would say, oh, what made it great? Like we would ask the follow-up natural question, right? About like, well, what'd you get up to, right? And so we don't let people get away with the one word, and it was fine, or like whatever, right? Like, tell me what happened. And so the record so far for a meeting, I was on a meeting with a client and it was an hour-long meeting, and we were trying to finalize a major agreement. It was worth like a $350,000 contract. So we really needed to figure out the last kind of final details of this contract. And at the 55-minute mark, she said, I got to go in like 5 minutes because I have to get to this other meeting. And we hadn't even talked about the contract yet. And so she said to me, but all we were doing for 55 minutes was catching up and talking about our weekends and our weeks and what we were looking forward to in the summer. And she had a bunch of travel coming up. So we were talking about the various places we were both going to be going. And, but we got the hour-long meeting done in 5 minutes. So she's like, I got to go in 5 minutes. Is everything we talked about basically aligned in the document? And I'm like, yeah, it's all there. It's everything that we've discussed about. The price is the same, everything like that. And she's like, okay, well then I'm good. And then I said, okay, I'll send you the PDF. She's like, super, I'll read it over and I'll sign it. I'll get it back to you tonight. And so we finished the meeting early, and yet we didn't, right? Ostensibly, we thought we need an hour to go through the entire document and contract to go through it. But we built so much trust with each other talking about minutia things that like, it was sort of like, oh yeah, also we have to do this other work thing at the same time.
Yeah, which you just demonstrated in real time what happens organically when we're in person, right? You happen to do it virtually.
But it's forced though. Like we have to you have to be you have to be intentional, right? Like in person, it's easy. Correct. Online, it's like, it's not easy. It doesn't feel natural.
Unless somebody is really comfortable doing it.
Right.
I have found, my experience has been, if there's one person in a group of people on the virtual call who is really comfortable making connection, asking questions and getting people to open up, everybody relaxes and does that thing.
Especially if they go first. Like what we've taught everybody at the company here is we teach everybody this when they start at Virtus, right? We're like, hey, you need to learn this skill. The meeting starts before it starts. And how it does is we do a social check-in with everybody, but we don't let anybody get away with like quick answers. We ask the obvious next question, like what made your weekend great, or what was frustrating this weekend. And then we also share in detail what we've been up to. And then so people kind of just like go, oh, that's how we play the game. So then boom, then that's how we play the game. And as you say, as long as one person sets the tone, then everybody else is usually relatively comfortable in following, it definitely, what I've noticed is that the meetings are just different. So the tone of the rest of the meeting is so much lighter, so much easier. It just flows when that part is done right. And when it's not, man, it just feels like hollow and dry. Like the meeting doesn't.
Yeah, and it's too easy to hide, right? The people who don't do the little, I call it the fax machine, right? Who don't do the little, hi, how are you?
Yeah.
Let's connect at the beginning of the meeting. They just sit there and hide. They don't say anything, or they keep their camera off, or whatever. Like, it's too easy to completely disappear. And forcing having this social moment and this interconnection really draws them out in every way that matters.
Somebody said to me once, because I was explaining this concept to someone, and they said, well, that feels quite inauthentic. And I said, oh, okay, because like I'm doing a thing. And she said, well, yeah. And I said, well, did you know how to drive standard? She's like, yeah. I'm like, do you remember what it was like the first time you drove standard? She's like, yeah, it was painful. I stalled the car. It was on a hill. I rolled backwards. People are honking at me. I'm like, cool. So now, if I asked you to drive standard, you would just drive standard. You wouldn't really think about it. It'd just be like a normal course of you driving, right? She's like, yeah. I'm like, same. And she's like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, at first it is tactical. You got to like think about it. You got to do it. It's a thing. But I don't think about it anymore. Just how I show up in a meeting. It's how we show up in meetings. And it's just how we run our meetings internally. So not doing it actually feels weirder than doing it.
Yeah. Have you found... You're making me think like there are a lot of these new norms that we need to create. And we haven't had to create work norms for a lot of decades. Like we're out of practice. Like, how do we do this? How do we do something new, right? It was something that we thought we all had figured out. And now there's this whole other layer that we've got to figure out new and codify new ways of doing it. And I don't think we flexed that muscle very recently.
Well, there hasn't really been a reason, right? And I think we sort of like got forced into this environment because of this global pandemic where we're all remote, and there wasn't any training about like how to be different in these spaces. I think one of the things that struck me right away is I remember finishing, we'd been virtual for so long, but at the same time, when the pandemic hit, we just were like, I would have 8-9 meetings a day because there was so much chaos going on, and there was a lot going on, as we all had. But one of the things I noticed is that I was self-monitoring during the meetings, and I was getting tired. And what I mean by that is when I go to a physical meeting, I don't bring a pocket mirror with me to the meeting. So when I'm having, say where you and I are having coffee, or we were in a boardroom right now, I would have no sense of what my body language was. I couldn't see what you see because I'm not holding up a pocket mirror while I'm having a conversation with you. But on Zoom or on Teams, if you don't shut off your self view, you've literally got a pocket mirror in the meeting showing you yourself. So we're self-monitoring, and we're thinking of like, do I have something in my teeth? Is my hair okay? Is my collar off on my shirt? Like, I would never even think of that if I was in an in-person meeting because I couldn't see it. But now, unless we turn that feature off, it actually creates a far greater psychological load because our ego gets engaged and involved about how we think we're showing up in the meeting. So one of the things we say to leaders is like, turn that feature off. Like, you do not need to be staring at yourself and self-monitoring and self-correcting during meetings. It's exhausting for your subconscious, and you don't even realize you're doing it. But by the end of the day, your subconscious you'll just feel tired. And yet you'll look back at your schedule and go, I don't understand why I feel so tired.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have a theater background, so I don't even think about it because, they sort of train that out of you. They record you all the time and you watch yourself all the time. And so I don't even think about that being on. But yeah, that makes 100% sense. I also think that there's an element of additional processing fatigue because you are trying to read micro expressions and body language when you're only seeing this.
By the way, this is the first time in the podcast when I knew you had arms.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, I did do this earlier.
Like, our arms have been down here the whole time. For those of you who are on video, right? Katherine or who aren't on video, Katherine and I, we basically got from our like upper body up. But our like in person, I would be seeing Katherine's arms moving about. She'd be seeing my hands, my arms gesticulating. But all of that's happening below the camera, right?
Yeah. And if, what is it, some crazy amount, like 93% of the information that we receive is visual and
Sure.
has nothing to do with the words that we're saying.
Well,
It's like,
it's
okay, how
well,
do you,
some businesses have like a thing where they don't insist that people have their cameras on. So now you've got half the people on a call with their cameras on and half the people on their call without their cameras on. And so as hard as it is with the camera on, it's even harder now when half the people are there and you can't see them and they're talking. And I find it like I have to concentrate so much harder to hear the
yeah,
person that doesn't have their video on. That's weird, but it's just true. It takes more work.
yeah, yeah, you can do it. Remember when we used to have the conference calls and there was
Mhm.
no video, right? And everything was
Yeah,
conference call. You can do it, but I think it's an all or nothing thing. I
yeah,
think
I agree.
the mental load to switch between the visual and audio and then one or the other is too much. It's just too much of context switching.
It's also, I think, the other thing I've noticed, and we've spoken, I've spoken to a lot of leaders about this topic is conflict in difficult conversations.
Oh
And
my gosh. Yeah.
because we moved into this environment, whether it's texting or whether it's like Slack messages or Teams messages, like text-based messages, where the intentionality is gone. There's no intonation in your voice. It's just a flat message. And, what we've learned is that when there is any type of emotional content to it, like frustration or angst, usually negative emotional content, that it really needs to be a video call. And then
Mm-hmm.
one level below that would be jump on the phone or do an audio call. And then after that, which please try to avoid, is anything to do with email and text messaging. Now, I get that there is in some places from a compliance perspective, they're like, we need to have a written document of all of this stuff. Cool. Record the meeting then. Like you can video record or audio record every meeting now with Fathom or Otter or Firefly to have a record of what happened and a transcript, And so for anything that has conflict or an emotional content to it, to just go to either in person or video to try to clear it up, because it's so much harder to do in a text-based format.
Yeah, especially when you're at the stage where there's some finality to it, a final decision that's coming out of it, and you anticipate a reaction by the other person. I would also argue that when you are trying to do the step before that or steps before that, that's also an opportunity for more actual interaction with them. Don't because you can ask all the follow-up questions. You can even just start with the help me understand before it ever becomes an emotional context conversation. You can keep it in that left brain vocabulary
Yeah.
longer when you can actually interact with the other person versus, the second you put anything in an email, you're dealing with the other person's interpretation of what you asked or said versus this where I can check it in real time. Is this the story that I'm making up in my head, or did you actually mean that the way that came out?
Well, and it doesn't linger, because I think one of the challenges
Yeah,
is like, say I said something to you and I could see from your visual reaction that it just didn't land well. I could stop myself and go, "Oh, what just happened there? Like, did something I say trigger you, or is like?" And we could have a conversation about it. But if I
yeah,
sent you an email, say I sent you an email, it's like 5 o'clock my time, it's like 8 o'clock your time at night, and then you're getting this email the next morning, 3 hours before, because if there's a time zone difference before I get to work. Well, now you're stewing over this email. Whereas in person, I could have corrected it really quickly and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. That's not what I meant. What I meant was this." And you're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm fine with that." Right. But
yeah,
instead, now you're waiting 3 hours to get a response from me while holding on to the belief pattern around what you thought my intent was. So it just like, I've just seen so many things go sideways in text-based conversations that way that can get so easily cleared up in person. With the caveat that the leader or the person in the conversation has the skills to be empathetic enough to recognize that something didn't land, and that they can check to see if they can either do a do-over or ask a question or be asked a question to try to clarify that, versus letting it sit for overnight, right, with an email.
yeah, yeah. Is that something that you feel that you can train virtually to teach people how to like watch for those clues and
Yeah, it's actually an area of emotional intelligence, right? So it's kind
yeah,
of in the area of self-awareness. So if we think about emotional intelligence, one of the models, the Goldman model, which is self-awareness, empathy, social social skills, self-regulation, and motivation, right? So this would be in the area of kind of like social skills and, well, it's kind of like self-awareness, self-regulation, and then social
Yep.
skills would be this part of our conversation. And so, we can teach people to be aware. Usually they have they'll either think in their head, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah, right.
okay, well, that's a big reaction. So to an email, this is probably an emotional topic. You should move away from email. Or they'll have a body sensation, a tightness in their chest, their stomach will bother them, their shoulders will tense up. And when you ask people, they're like, oh yeah, for me, this happens. Like, okay, cool. So then when that happens again, that's a trigger to say, hey, you've been triggered by this communication. Maybe best not to write back right away. So that's a reaction, right? Maybe best to sleep on it and then decide on the response tomorrow. Or if you wake up in the morning and you still feel the same way, maybe best not to even respond, but instead to reach out to the person by phone or by video and have an actual conversation. Because the reality is that even if they waited overnight and then they got up in the morning and they're like, I'm going to respond to the email now, and they hit send, we don't know that the other person isn't in back-to-back meetings for 6 hours. So even when I hit send, I still have no resolution because I have to still sit with this thing for 6 more hours. Even though I've said my part, I don't know how they're going to respond. This just drags out what could be, for me, either a difficult conversation or conflict, but something with emotional content to it. So,
or a 5-minute conversation to discover, oh, that was a misunderstanding.
Yeah, or 30 seconds. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so much faster to deal with these things live. So, but we live in this world of different time zones. We live in a world of like instant needing to get things off of our plates, like a lot of email communication, a lot of asynchronous communication, whether it's, email, Slack, text, whatever, Microsoft Teams. And so it's really the awareness of, is this the best mode of communication to deal with this thing? If it's just the cursory day-to-day stuff and need answers from people, of course, fire away, text all you want, right? Like use your Slack messaging. But for anything that feels like it has an emotional context for either me or in the way that I read what I read from another person, it's best to try to move that as either to quick phone call or to video. That's what we've learned.
That's funny. Not funny, haha, funny, odd.
Yeah.
In that, one of the things that I teach is asking better questions. So both for the person who is sending the email, they may think it's perfectly fine to send this as an email because they don't intend any emotional conflict, right?
For sure.
And so they send an email and it hits the other person weird, right? When you get that response back from the other person, whatever it is, what you do next as the instigator of that, whether you intended it or not or whatever, is ask a question. I have found that asking a question, usually along the lines of, help me understand, or how did this land for you? Or I'm sensing that this didn't land the way I intended. Can we have a conversation? Any of those, stops the spinning and immediately diffuses that emotional context. As a recipient, what you were saying is maybe sleep on it, maybe not answer right away, maybe immediately reach out and try to have the conversation to preempt that spiraling. Yeah, exactly. As the recipient, if it hits you wrong, I think it's on you to start asking questions. Did you intend this? Did you, or is this, I'm sensing some subtext here. Am I reading something into this? That's perfectly, innocence the wrong word, but that's because it could be loaded later. But that's a perfectly valid response to somebody who may not even be aware that they're writing in an inflammatory manner.
Well, and it's funny because we don't know what triggers other people.
Yes.
Because
different filters.
I remember using one word, and the word was buddy. The word was buddy. And I wrote, hey, buddy, to somebody. But they took it as like, hey, buddy. And I'm like, what? Who would say that? And they're like, well, no, but when they grew up, that's what was said in a mean way.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I was being cordial. I was being casual, actually, right? But they then took the rest of the email with the same tonality, the same thought process. And I'm like, okay, but if you strip that out, how would you read the email? Oh, no, it was fine. I'm like, okay, well, but it was good. But that got cleared up quite quickly. But it was funny because how was I to know that phrasing, which I was just trying to be casual and collegial would have that response.
Yeah.
I think you raise an excellent point though about, one of the things as a leader is that I think leaders think they need to make statements, like bold statements, or like put forward their opinion. And I think one of the really great skills that I've seen leaders demonstrate is a sense of curiosity. So before responding, keep asking questions until you deeply understand the other person. Not for agreement, by the way. So the idea is not to keep asking questions so you can agree with them. It's just that you understand what it is they're saying. Because I've been in situations where I've watched two leaders be in conflict who don't understand what each of them are saying. And I'm listening and I'm like, they actually agree. I'm pretty sure they actually agree. And I've stopped them and said, can you just ask questions instead of making statements? So they started asking questions back and forth. And that's where they landed, that they actually agreed, but yet they thought they were in conflict with each other on the topic because they were bouncing statements back and forth, and they had lost any interest in curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah. They were trying to be the last word or have the finality of the conversation.
Like, I think sometimes it's like, it's not, I was taught a long time ago, like I can either be right or I can be happy. If I'm trying to be right, then I'm not choosing happiness. And a lot of the times trying to be right is really trying to bash my opinion over somebody else's head, which without any interest or curiosity about what's going on with the other person. And anybody that's been in like a intimate relationship for a very long time, or been married or have a partner for long enough, knows that that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's like the root of all fights.
Yeah, for sure. And it doesn't work for followers very well. People don't necessarily want to just be told. They want to have some agency in their work experience. So just being told this is the answer because I said so is not, just doesn't fly in the work world.
So what else do you think that, you asked me about some examples of what I think, the behaviors are that leaders need to shift to show up in a really solid way in this remote environment. What are other things that you've seen that you think work really well?
Yeah, you and I talked briefly about this shift between alignment and attunement, where alignment is, okay, here's the direction. This is where we're trying to go. Is everybody clear about the goals? Or maybe even the process, how we would like to see it play out. And attunement is more about paying attention to what's going on in the moment and making those micro adjustments. So my classic example is where, they show up at the end of the quarter and say, your numbers are off. And it's like, well, my numbers have been off the entire quarter. Why did you wait for 3 months to tell me that my numbers were off, or to have this conversation? Like, attunement is somebody waiting maybe 6 weeks or 4 weeks and then stopping by and saying, what's your plan? Let's take a look at this and figure out what we can do differently if we need to do something differently, or, whatever. And I think a lot of that, I mean, it can border on micromanagement, but I think a lot of that awareness level seems to be out of sight, out of mind. If they're remote or if they're hybrid and I'm not seeing them on a regular basis, my proximity bias is that I will pay attention to the people that I can just go talk to, and hammer on the people who are floundering because I'm not seeing them every day.
I think there's a piece in there that around one-on-ones and having that one-on-one time just scheduled.
Yeah.
Our pattern here is we do them, like I do one-on-ones weekly with the leaders that report to me. And, the big first part of it is just to check in, like, how are you doing? Like, what's going on in your world? Right. And then the next part of it is like, what are the top 3 things that you're working on right now that you're trying to get accomplished? And, it's week to week, right? So it's just for this week.
Yep.
And then what are your biggest stuck points that you have right now that are holding you back from being most effective in your role? The next question I ask is, do you have any feedback for me? So is there, as a leader, am I doing too much of something, not enough of something? What's just right? And so getting that feedback helps me to understand for that person how I need to potentially show up more of or differently for them And then if I have any feedback for them, whether it's praising feedback or some type of constructive feedback that's developmental in nature, then I have an opportunity to share that with them. And then we talk about any innovations that they've figured out. So, there's a lot of AI stuff going on in the company right now. So they'll be like, oh, we got this new agent that we've developed and it does this and this. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I didn't even know that was happening, but right. And so, but it's an opportunity for us to really get clear. Whereas from a strategy perspective, we have a weekly, huddle with the team. We've got a monthly strategy session. We've got a quarterly OKR session. We have rhythms for that where we're all together, as you say, getting aligned about what we're trying to achieve as a company. But the attunement piece of it, of like, how are you actually doing and what's going on in your world, requires what I found in a virtual environment is it's far more deliberate, and one-on-ones, they have to happen. Now, people travel, whatever. So sometimes you miss a week here or there, but the reality is that they're in the calendar and people have that set time with their leader to, we use a format because that's the format over time, the one that I've described that works really well. But at the same time, really, it's in like the one-on-one I was doing before we launched to this podcast actually was over lunch. And the first probably 25 minutes of it, we were talking about like the vacation I just got back on from the vacation she just got back from, like, just having like an open chat. We were talking about remote work because of the fact that we were having lunch together. And normally we would sometimes go for a walk or we would do our one-on-ones over video, but we were just talking about the differential because she came from before she came here, she was in a full office environment. And now she's in a remote environment where her team members are in Spain, in Nigeria, all over North America. And she's like, it's different. Like, I'm not seeing people every day. So we're just talking about the fact that she's going to be going out to coffee shops and just being out and socializing while doing the work as part of just keeping that as part of her day. But that took up the first 25 minutes, was just having that conversation before we got into the like normal agenda that we were going to cover for the one-on-one.
Yeah, I agree. I also think it's super important at some point for the employee to own those one-on-ones.
Yes.
That if the manager is constantly driving and saying, and now is the part where I ask these questions, right? Like, I'm like, all right, there's something fundamentally wrong here. Like this is not about the manager driving the work. It's about the employee driving the work and driving the conversation. And I love that you have the kind of relationship with your direct report where you want to spend 25 minutes talking about your vacations with each other.
It was great.
Yeah.
We were sitting on a patio. I brought my dog. We were sitting on a patio having lunch. It was sunny. It's sunny here today. Like, it was lovely. And the thing is, like, so my rule of thumb with the one-on-ones, when people start, I'm like, this is for you. It's not for me. So you drive it. I'll give you the templated agenda, but you can change it. You decide how you want to use this time when we're together. If you want to follow the agenda, great. If you want to modify it, great. If you just want to have a free-form conversation this time, it's totally up to you. If you want to go for lunch, if you want to do it on Zoom, if you want to both be walking in different cities across North America while on our AirPods on our phones, that works too. I'll walk my dog, right? We can go for coffee, whatever it is. You decide the format. I'll give you some parameters around what's worked well in the past, but it's up to you to decide like what would work best from this. So I agree 100% that it needs to not be driven by the leader. Otherwise, it ends up feeling like performance management, and that's not the intention.
Yeah, I don't think it is, because it's not an accountability checkup. It is truly that attunement piece of how can I be serving you better? How can I be helping you? Well, that's only going to come out if you're totally you, the employee, are totally honest about what are you working on and where are you stuck and what obstacles can I help move for you, and on and on and on. Like you have to tell me. You don't want me to know your business so well that I can tell you answers. That's backwards. It's totally backwards.
Well, it's true because, when you think about like the higher you go up in the organization, particularly when you get to the level of CEO, you are really an inch deep knowledge in a mile wide set of subjects. Yes. With leaders who are maybe an inch wide on certain subjects, but a mile deep, like they really understand it well. And so with that in mind, like they are the experts. Steve Jobs had this wonderful quote. He's like, you don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. Yeah. You hire smart people so they'll tell you what to do. Like, yes. Right. And in most of the decisions that come up, I'm like, well, you have all the facts, you have all the details, and you're fully engaged and involved, or two of the leaders are. Why don't the two of you decide and tell me what the answer is? Because I really don't have the depth of understanding of it. Now, if it's a historical thing and they're like, it's a precedent setting thing and they want to discuss that, that's totally different. I'm like, yeah, we need to think about what this precedent is and can we continue to do it this way? Sure, I'll happily be part of that conversation. But yeah, I can't be at the depth of the 8 people that report to me. I can't have that depth of knowledge. Like I just can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Because why did I hire 8 people
Yeah.
to do those things, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's too much work for one person. So
Well,
yeah, there's a reason that all 8 of you were there.
And it's the same with their direct reports, right? Like I'm like, hey, you have to rely on your direct reports knowing way more about the subject matter than you do. And that's great. And you want to grow them into that capability level so that they're doing the work and you're helping build the systems that support the work that they're doing. And you're helping put out fires and you're helping them with difficult decisions that might have precedent setting to them or where they haven't run into it before, right? But the getting into the micro details of their day-to-day work is not supporting them and it's not doing you any good either.
No. I had one of my favorite managers ever was someone who had multiple direct reports and was forever doing the like dot connecting, because all of us direct reports, as you said, only had a mile wide, right, or an inch wide of what we were focused on. And our manager was like, ooh, there's some overlap here. We should probably get the two of you together, to like not counteract each other or whatever. And it's like, okay, that to me makes a lot of sense for that position. And that we can continue to operate independently as the direct reports and doing whatever it is that you're doing, and having somebody else who has the bigger picture say, I think there's a train wreck coming. You guys should probably talk to each other before that happens. Like, thank you so much. We need that. Or there's some synergy here. You two are working on something similar. Let's get you guys in a room together. Because again, we were doing our full-time jobs. There's no way that we would have known what everybody else was working on.
And I think that's one of the problems that people experience when everybody went fully remote is they said, well, but how am I going to know?
Now it happens to everybody. Yeah.
How do I know what everybody's going to be doing? Like, I'm like, well, how could you possibly right now? Like, if you're in your office and they were in their offices or in their cubicles, just because you were in your office, you somehow magically know what they were doing on their computers? You had no idea what they were doing, right? The other thing I found, which was wild, is that when the people were going back to work, we were asking them, like, what's your experience of being back at work? And most people would say, well, as a team, we're back 3 days a week out of 5. But we work on a lot of cross-functional teams with different departments within the company, and they don't share the same days per week that they're back in the office with us. So we're in the office, but we're in Zoom meetings all day. Like, right. Now, the leadership teams, though, they felt differently. So like CEO and executive teams, because they would say, hey, we're going to be in the office like Tuesdays and Thursdays or whatever. So they would actually get time together because they're on a team. That worked really well for them. But for everybody below that level, they're working on so many cross-functional teams that they just didn't cross over. And that's only if the company happened to be based in the same city. Well, most of the organizations we work with, the people are distributed all over North America or Canada or throughout the States if it's a US only company. And so even before the pandemic, they were mostly on virtual calls or on conference calls with people in other offices. So there has been a benefit in that people are more comfortable being on video calls now, because we were all doing conference calls, or not we were all, but the world was doing a lot of conference calls before this. So I think there's been a benefit to moving over to this video environment. But 6 years in, I can't believe like we're spending quite a bit of time on this, talking about the fact that this is still happening for leaders. And then, I don't know, every week, some other companies like, you all have to go back to work. And I'm like, well, good luck with that. People moved, right? Like people moved cities. Some people moved like 100 miles away from where they lived, before the pandemic. And so this whole we're coming back to work thing, how? They're nowhere near the office anymore, right? And they've got a wonderful lifestyle. Or even if they are in the city, they're like, well, I can drop my kid off at school. I can pick him up at 3 o'clock And so now all of a sudden you're telling me I'm not going to be able to do those things anymore. You're asking for a fundamentally different type of life than I've become accustomed to. And even if it's like,
or a
well,
financial burden that
it's
I had
exactly, I've got
unburdened myself of.
daycare
Yeah.
and all these other things. So yeah, I mean, we're still talking about this, Katherine, and it's wild. I'm wondering, like, what other positive leadership attributes do you think are serving leaders well right now that are making, like, in this age where we've got 4 generations in the workplace, we've got, which is the first time that's ever happened. We're in remote work. We're in a lot of cross-functional teams. Communication and the amount of information that's being pushed at us is like the biggest it's ever been. It's the most challenging work environment. And intellectually, I think it's the most challenging work environment we've ever had to work in. I'm curious, and the pace of change with AI, everything seems to be accelerating. It's always felt that way, but it feels like it's really accelerating now. What do you think of the other attributes that leaders need to be doubling down on?
I'm going to answer you with, I think that there are four dimensions that I think serve leaders really well in this particularly tumultuous environment. One is mindset.
Yep.
They are crystal clear about where they're going and why it's important. The North Star is salient. The second is method. They have a strong moral compass or an ethical compass. They are very clear about how they want things to be done. Maybe not necessarily the precise approaches, but but there are lines beyond which they will not cross. The third are metrics. They know what's important to them and how to measure that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the traditional business models of profit or utilization, or, I mean, those are great indicators, but the leaders that are handling this weird times have metrics that we would consider softer metrics, like employee engagement or company culture numbers, things that give them an indication of, which is the fourth dimension, mood. How is this landing? How is this hitting on everybody who is in the company? How are our clients perceiving this? Are we doing good work in the world? Are we perceived as good people with a good either product or service or direction that we're going? And I think the leaders who have a handle on all four of those are weathering the tidal waves so much better than the ones who are singularly focused on profit or singular, right? If one of those dimensions gets out of whack, the whole company starts wobbling.
Mindset, method, metrics, mood. I love it. Katherine, it's been such a pleasure to be on the podcast. Thank you so much for you to coming in to share your wisdom today.
Thank you. This has been great. We could talk about that. Let's have coffee again.
Right? How's that for you?